Thank you, Mr. President. It's a delight to welcome our honorary member, the Mayor of Wellington. Justin was elected Mayor of our city last October, and he had been councillor for the Northern Ward since 2010 and Deputy Mayor since 2013. And he and his wife Liz and their daughters live in Johnsonville. Now, Justin is actually from Invercargill, and he's come to Wellington, no doubt attracted by our semi-tropical climate. He spent his 7th form year in Germany and then came back to Dunedin, where he did a BA LLB, and then hived off to the University of Heidelberg in Germany, where he did a Master of Laws. Then, having been attracted by our climate to Wellington, he has worked in the private sector here in a commercial property company, and also was a co-founder of Kapai, which was set up in 2006 in order to fill the pukus of Wellingtonians, I think that's the statement that comes out, with good New Zealand produce. Now, Justin's also been involved in many other activities, including being on the board of the Wellington SPCA, on Wellington Waterfront Limited, and a guardian of Zealandia, which of course this club knows a great deal about. Rotary's been heavily involved, and of course our own Denise Church is the chair. I won't go through all of the promises that you made, Justin. This is a very well educated politically minded club, so they will know full well the promises you made, and we certainly look forward to hearing from you now.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Thank you for the invitation, Peter. Kia ora mai tātou. Good afternoon, everyone. I have a sad feeling that I'm going to be a real anticlimax today. What we've had, the resignation of Peter Dunn from Parliament. We've had the travails of American reality television, politics in the United States. We had Gloria arriving in Wellington, New Zealand, when the shit was hitting the fan. So hopefully I can live up to some sort of expectation. I do want to acknowledge Kerry here, previous Mayor, and Kerry, I haven't told this story, I don't to anybody really, but when I first ran for council in 2010, Kerry was one of the first people I went to go and meet. I hadn't known any of the other councillors. I didn't even know who the Deputy Mayor was at the time. Please don't anyone let Ian McKinnon know that fact. But Kerry gave me some really sage words about running for council, and I took those on board, and it helped me throughout the campaign as well. Unfortunately, I didn't get to serve alongside Kerry. I would have enjoyed doing that, but such is life in the way of politics sometimes. But Kerry, thank you, and thank you for your outstanding service to the city. As Anthony mentioned, I grew up in Invercargill, so I'm acutely aware of how unlikely it would be that I'd become the Mayor of Wellington. I don't hold dual citizenship there nor here, so I'm not in the same throes of panic that Barnaby Joyce might find himself in these days. But my two kids are both born here in Wellington. Look, this is our home. Liz, who's from Timaru, my wife and I, we decided when we left Heidelberg in Germany after finishing my LLM, that there was only one place we wanted to come and live in. We'd spent a good amount of time here. This was a city that we thought New Zealand best reflected the type of city we wanted to be in and to raise our kids in. It's cosmopolitan, it's forward-thinking, it's progressive, it's very diverse, and there's no other city like it in New Zealand, and I'm very comfortable in that fact. As you well know, and because you've all made it your home. Today I just want to talk about some things that will be happening over the next little while. Look, it took a group of German bankers to tell us we had the most livable city in the world. Dankeschön to them. But we all know that. But there are things we can improve as well. We've had an interesting 10 months since I was elected. We've had earthquakes. We've had wahine-like storms. We've had slips in the Nodonga and Nyora gorges, and then we've had an election coming up shortly as well, which is proving to be equally turbulent. A wee story around the earthquake, because that was 4 weeks into my job. So I went to sleep that night, said to my wife, I'm looking forward to things just settling down tomorrow morning after spending four weeks hectically trying to corral councillors and just to get things in order. And at about 12:05, the the ground started shaking and Liz started nudging me. So we've got 2 kids, 7 and 4, and having kids, as you'll know, at that age is a form of sleep deprivation and torture. So I try not to wake up unless it's absolutely necessary. She kept poking, kept prodding, and after a while she actually started screaming at me, "Justin, you're the fricking mayor." And closely followed by, "Wake up." And I must concede, she didn't actually say fricking either. Slightly harsher. But I did wake up and we got on with the job. So what are we going to be working on the next little period? Well, I made 25 pledges throughout the campaign. Hopefully you all know them well. But by the end of this year, we will be well on the way to achieving 23 of them. One will take a little bit longer. It wasn't a short-term project, and that's working towards an extension of the Wellington International Airport. It's in the courts at the moment, but realistically that was always a 5 to 7 year project. But some of the things we do need to improve, first and foremost and largest priority for me, is around housing. Thank you again to Rotary for your indication of support for Te Whare Okioki, which is New Zealand's first wet house. We're not allowed to call it that. Apparently central government don't like us calling it that, so we're going to focus on the name Te Whare Okioki. And that's about getting the most vulnerable people in Wellington off our streets and into a home. As you'll see on the weekend, the government's announced $10.9 billion of spending on roads. People say to me, "Oh look, is it the purview of local government to be building houses, or central government for that matter?" Well, absolutely it is. You know, we build sewage treatment plants, we build local roads, we build community centres, we build a whole array of different things. We can also build houses. We're the largest landlord in Wellington. We have 2,400 units, and we've got a commitment to increase that by 750 over the next 10 years. I hear repeatedly now more people moving to the city down here because Auckland has simply become too expensive, particularly for my generation or anyone younger. If they can't afford $1 million average price of a home up there, they want to come somewhere where they can earn well, have a great life in a city with a nice gentle breeze. And this is where they're going to come. So we can build more homes. We currently build on average 750 a year. We need to increase that to at least 1,000. And the good news is in the last 12 months we've got that up to 1,500 through the support with the special housing areas as well. Transport projects. I'll put this up just as a bit of a conversation starter. We are working through a process called Let's Get Wellington Moving. This is following on from the Basin Reserve project that fell flat. And we're hand in hand with NZTA and the Greater Wellington Regional Council. We've got here down the quays, we've got people walking, we've got cycling, we've got people that drive there too, and here we've got some light rail too. Light rail is in the conversation at the moment. It's realistically we're looking at about a 9-year horizon, but I put it out there because ultimately in a future point in time we will need this in Wellington. Whether it be light rail or another form of mass transit, I don't know, and to be honest I don't really care so long as it's mass transit. We've got really good public transport in Wellington that gets us largely from the north of the city, Tawa, Johnsonville and the Hutt, and into the CBD, but we don't have anything that takes us across from the eastern suburbs and out towards the airport. Long term, this is what we're going to need. It's a question of how long, and I don't think it's a question of if. And that's where most cities are heading as well. We want to make sure we have an increasingly more livable city. Look, we've got a wonderful city as we are. We have about 18,000 people live in the CBD, but I expect that to double over the course of the next 20 years. And just think about that for a minute. We're going to double our population in the CBD. More people living in apartments, more people walking, more people getting around, and we want to see more pedestrianisation in the CBD as well. This is a real-time project. This is connecting through to Lombard Lane, back into Lower Cuba Street, and you'll see the new development taking place there in the corner of Victoria and Manor Street as well. And we'll continue to do this in our laneways. This is ironing out the kinks. Unfortunately, you can't see the full image, which comes down here, and this is Mount Victoria Tunnel. Look, we well know that congestion points in the city, if you're driving, at the Nodonga Gorge, coming down, merging with the Hutt traffic, the Terrace Tunnel, and Mount Victoria in particular. Those three aspects need to be resolved. The first project is Petone Granada Link Road. That'll take a third of the traffic that comes down the gorge. It'll take them directly over to the Hutt. It'll save them time, but also take 30% of that traffic off the gorge when it doesn't actually want to go down there. It wants to go to the Hutt. That's a good start. As part of the Get Welly Moving project, we're also looking at potential solutions around a duplication tunnel at the terrace, or second tunnel, and likewise at Mount Victoria. They're expensive projects. We've got three options at the moment: 250 million, 700 million, and 1.6 billion. But I take great comfort from the fact that every time I see the Prime Minister, Bill English, he tells me that they have money to spend in Wellington. So we'll work towards those. The Film Museum. We will be lodging consent for this project by the end of this month. We've got the heads of agreement now signed with Sir Peter Jackson and Sir Richard Taylor, and we want to turn the first sod by the end of the year. Why is this significant? Well, for a start, its location directly opposite Te Papa. It'll transform the Wakefield Cable Street precinct and provide an even stronger connection from the waterfront all the way into Courtney Place and the hospitality and restaurant area. To give you some context, 550,000 people this year visited Matamata to go and see Hobbiton. 98% of them were international tourists. We get, of Chinese tourists coming to New Zealand, only 10% come to Wellington. 70% of them will leave Auckland and go to either Rotorua, Christchurch or Queenstown, but only 10% come here. We just need something else to put us on the horizon of all those tourists that are flooding into the country, and when we get that international airport, that'll only help boost as well. I have no doubt in my mind this will become the single busiest man-made tourist attraction in New Zealand. Concert Arena. So we're doing some work on this right now. Why is this so current? Well, because the regional rate we have for the stadium was scheduled to come off next year. So we could put that in abeyance and not continue to collect that levy from across the entire region, or we could use it for a worthwhile purpose. I think we all agree, or certainly the universal response I've had, is that Wellington needs a concert arena. TSB is good. It doesn't have appropriate acoustics. It was a multi-venue facility. It wasn't intended to host concerts and the like. And it's certainly not of an international quality, and that's in part why we missed out on so many concerts and events compared to the likes of an Auckland, or even these days, to some extent, down in Dunedin. The location proposed is on the concourse of the stadium. So here's Westpac Stadium here. We'd be building over the rail lines, again making use of land that could be better developed. We'd have a hub precinct together with the stadium. It takes care of public transport access, a good source of car parks, and we've got funding in place in our long-term plan. We need the regional support for this to make it affordable, but they are right on board, so I'm looking forward to getting that project underway. And we'll have our report back from READER, our Economic Development Agency, again by the end of this month. A Capital of Culture, and again I'll acknowledge Kerry on this one. She's doing a great job with the fundraising efforts to raise funds on behalf of Victoria University School of Music and New Zealand Symphony Orchestra. I pick out this picture. The fern sculpture is coming back. We're not far off. That's, the work is now being commissioned and that will be back up once the work is completed. This is currently the Wellington City Council offices, and here's the Town Hall. The Town Hall strengthening process has commenced in earnest. They're doing the drilling on site, they're getting those works underway, and you'll actually see some physical construction of the base isolation for the Town Hall by December this year. That's a 4-year process. It's not easy to base isolate the entire Town Hall. It'll be finished by about June 2021. Victoria University School of Music and the NZSO will have as their permanent home the Town Hall, but we'll also have access for community events and Council Civic Chamber as well. They'll also take over this building, hopefully. That's not yet confirmed, but should the fundraising go well and all goes according to plan, we'll also have a student campus down here in the heart of Civic Square, because we want to enliven it. We want to make it a place where lots of people. It's a public space for congregation, celebration and commemoration. The Hook of Maui. Now many of you will know this project because it was completed in earnest in 2008-2009. The work was undertaken for this project, but unfortunately it fell away because the cost has increased. There was a problem with the Civil Aviation Authority because they wanted to shoot a laser into the air, and the costs became too large for the council to bear. I want to get this project back underway. Wellington is the capital of culture for New Zealand. We're the home for 50% of our national arts and cultural institutions. We've got this wonderful, beautiful harbour and waterfront, but also we want to have that destination gateway marker, that postcard picture, and whether it be on the highway, if we choose a separate location, we'll do that work. But I want to have that as a marker for Wellington. If you're not aware of the story, I mean, Wellington's name in Te Reo Māori is Te Upoko o Te Ika o Maui, the head of the fish of Maui. Maui stood on the waka that was Te Waipounamu, the South Island of New Zealand, and he fished the North Island out of the ocean, and we're the head of that fish. It's great being the head of the fish. We're a smart capital. Auckland is much less fortunate given their geographical location. So I'm working with the Sculpture Trust to try and get this back up and running. The pledges that were made back then still hold, and we're committed to supporting this as part of our council. Matariki. Now some of you will disagree. People say if you're going and speaking to an audience, at least half of them don't agree, you haven't said anything. So I am keenly interested in having Matariki established as a real national festival in New Zealand, led in Wellington, and hopefully across the entire country. I think it is utterly ridiculous that we celebrate and have as a public holiday Queen's birthday, when at the same time of year we don't have any celebration of Matariki and the Māori New Year, and something that has a real meaning to New Zealanders and to our sense of place and sense of nationhood. So we'll be funding significant amount next year to make this a real Wellington Community Festival. The benefits are multifaceted, they're culturally, socially, but also economically. We want to make sure that we have more events and attractions throughout that winter period in Wellington when people want to go out, when people want to come and visit the city as well. Street activation. Now you'll be aware that we've been undertaking a series of laneway developments in Wellington, either in Leeds Street, Egmont Street, Masons Lane, Lombard Lane's the most recent one. Why are we doing this? Because these are also our most dangerous spots in the city. These are where our violent sexual assaults have been taking place. So we're seeking to enliven them, seeking to put people into them, to activate the spaces, more businesses, more people living there as well. And I want to continue to increase this. And likewise bringing art and other tokens into the city. So when you're walking around, every street corner you turn, if you're a visitor or a Wellingtonian, you say, wow, that you have that sense of a living city, a city that's dynamic, just a little bit more interesting than other places you might visit. And that's why we're going to colour our city as well. We want to make the arts more accessible so that when you come to the city, again, for anybody, you might not be interested in going to the museums, so we'll take the or the art galleries, so we'll take them to you and put them on the exterior facades of buildings. And so we're working through projects around that. And making sure that we are the most multicultural and accepting city in the country and one of the leading in the world. And we're really lucky. We've got more than, I think, 90 ethnicities represented in Wellington. I spent some time recently in Toronto and I was just staggered at how multicultural it was, but the sense of pride in all these refugees and new immigrants and becoming Canadians. Why is this important? Because it's the sense of what Wellington is. We've always been leaders. We've been leaders in homosexual law reform. We were the first city or capital city in the world to declare itself nuclear free. We're extremely multicultural. We're very, very welcoming. And we've seen in the States recently where it's becoming even more divided with plenty of hate speech. We want to be the exact opposite, and we want to welcome people in. And this is a longer term project, but equally significant for the city's future, and that's the opportunity around our waterfront. There's a lot going on at the waterfront at the moment, but as you can see here, we've got our stadium, concert arena, we're just in behind that. But then over here, we've got Stats House and the BNZ. And the BNZ in this picture is actually in the process of being constructed, so it's an older picture. But there's a unique opportunity there as well, because there's a very real likelihood that those two buildings will come down, and a number of the other Centreport buildings are also coming down. So what's the opportunity? Do we want to suck out more of our commercial office space onto the waterfront, or do we want to have them right in the heart of the city? Where's the opportunity there? More housing? Is it for sports facilities? Is it for people or park and recreation space? But what can we make of that space in our waterfront? We've been working since the early 2000s on the waterfront framework from effectively Freiburg Beach all the way through to Site 10, which is being constructed at the moment. Then they've done an incredible job of enlivening that waterfront, which used to be the largest car park in all of the city. I now want to continue that on to go north beyond Site 10 and into the centre port and claim that back for the city rather than just having office space or commercial port activities. I'm not saying we'll get rid of the port. That's going to be there for a long time yet. It's a significant economic contributor. That would be silly. But there are aspects of that land that we can claw back for Wellington that I think will benefit the city. There's an example of one project taking place right now. That's Site 10, what it'll look like in the future when it's completed. Just around that, we'll improve all the public space as well. And we're actually just consulting on Site 9 as a proposal for a building there shortly. And again, that's improving that link between the railway station and coming back to the Meridian building, Wagamama, and the facilities around there. And finally, Shelley Bay is one that's on the horizon right as we speak. And there'll be some that say, oh look, we shouldn't be doing anything there, we should just be leaving it. There will be others that say, oh, why is council investing in this space? Well, I'll tell you what the situation actually is. We don't own this land. We own a small sliver of land abutting off from the roadside back across to the waterfront. All of this land and behind there is owned by Taranaki Whānui and the Port Nicholson Block Trust. We don't want to squander an opportunity. That land has been sitting there for about 9 years now and effectively been wasting away, certainly the buildings that are on that space. We've had a proposal to us to say they will pay and improve all of that space if we'll sell them some of that land. We'll get about $10 million in income to do that, and some of that income we'll use to improve the public infrastructure, not necessarily here, but in getting to here. So from the crossing, and the cutting at Miramar to all the way into Shelley Bay. That makes good sense. We're going to have to do it at some point in time in the future anyway. And that'll benefit all Wellingtonians. In return, we'll get a much enhanced Shelley Bay facility. There'll be boutique hotel accommodation there, good public space, parks, walkways, cycleways, and we'll retain access to all of the beachside and everything else as well. So this is one I'm really committed to getting done. I don't want to squander the opportunity again. My fear is that if we don't make a decision and we don't get on with this now, it'll be another decade before we see any improvement, which also costs ratepayers. So thank you very much for your time today. If you've got any questions, happy to answer, but we may be short of time. Kia ora.
We've got time for perhaps one or two if they're quick. Is there anybody got a burning question that they'd like to make?
Justin, you've certainly got my vote for Rotary. I also think you should think about the Kapahaka National Congress too, which Māori are keen and quite Māori appreciate your support. With Shelley Bay, what's your own feeling about the ability to actually proceed? Because obviously it's high in your agenda, but what are the hurdles that need to be overcome?
There aren't many, to be honest. They've got a resource consent, they've got a strong partnership and a joint venture. We just need to approve the sale from council, which we'll be doing, I think, September the 25th. We're scheduled to meet on that. So if we say yes, they will then commence the works in earnest. It's a 13-year program. I think they want to build about 350 to 380 units. There's a strong public focus on having a portion of those developments being affordable. So we're talking to the developer about that. We'd like to see that too, but I understand that ultimately it's their land and they need to make that work financially. But if we can get that agreement, then I think there's a little standing in the way.
Thank you, Justin. Justin has to get away to another appointment, so we're cut on time. Anthony, a quick thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've heard a thoughtful address, one that's had some challenging ideas, but one that's also optimistic about Wellington now and the Wellington it can be. And I think that sums up what this club is about, being thoughtful, challenging and optimistic about Wellington. And we're committed to working on a number of those ideas with the council. And I'm sure individuals around here will also be well engaged with you and the council in considering other ideas. So I'd invite the club to thank you for your time and your address.